Hello everybody and welcome to Wesley's Plant World with me, Wesley Peterson, and today I want to do a video where I show you how my first two plants that I ever planted in semi-hydroponics, passive hydroponics, and that was around 2 months ago now, and this is the result of those two plants. Now, I decided to use these two plants as my first two experiments because they're the two plants in my collection that I have not been enjoying the most. And so I thought, right, I'll give this a chance because if it doesn't work out, then I'm not going to be too sad, but at the same time, I will be a little bit sad. And the first one is this monstrosity next to me here. This is my Zamioculcas zamiifolia, and I have had this plant literally years, and since I've had it, well, I just haven't enjoyed it, but at the same time I haven't had the heart to get rid of this plant, and I've wanted to fight on with this plant as much as possible because it just gives me a thrill keeping it going, and this is the worst it's ever looked. I'm sorry, but I just had to make a video and show you this because when I first bought this plant, it had lovely, big, long stems here, you can see. And this is the large form of Zamioculcas zamiifolia. So this plant always throws out new stems that get to around 1 meter tall, and then they get too heavy for themselves and they snap in the middle or they bend to the side. Hence I have this metal ring holding up these stems I have here. Now I had so many stems on this that broke to the sides that I pruned them off and I've put them in vases and tried to propagate them, and they never got any roots after months and months and months, and then they yellowed off and died, so I had to throw them away. So every time I've had a branch since then that's just snapped off to the side, I've just pruned it off and thrown it away. And well, this plant has amazed me every year, and that is why I've decided to keep it, because every January, February time, it starts producing a lot more new stems and they come up and they look fresh, healthy and beautiful. And since I've had it in the ring, it's managed to sustain those stems. Even though they do get a kink in the middle, they're just not strong enough to keep themselves up themselves. And all my other Zamioculcas zamiifolia plants have no problems with this. Yes, they can lean to the side and so forth, but they don't get kinks and things like this one. So anyway, 2 months ago, I transferred this plant to semi-hydroponics. It's living in leca balls, and I literally rushed the process. So that means I just took the plant out of the soil, rinsed off the roots with water as much as possible, took all the roots away that were sloughing off, and then I put it in this catch pot here. I didn't have anything see-through at the time, so it's a brown plastic catch pot. I put lots of holes around the edge for oxygenation with my soldering iron, and then I filled up the reservoir to 1/3 of the way up straight away. Now, this is a plant that doesn't like to sit in water normally when it's in soil, and it doesn't need watering that often. So taking it straight out of the soil, putting it straight into a water reservoir that is around 10 centimeters deep was not a good idea. And this is why I'm making this video, to help all of you if you're thinking of transferring a plant that doesn't need much water to semi-hydroponics. What I should have done is put it in the leca balls and then left it for a couple of days with no added nutrient mix, because I always soak my leca balls anyway, so they would be moist, and that would be enough to sustain the roots at the beginning. And then I would, a couple of times a week, flush through the leca balls with nutrient mix to keep them moist, but no reservoir at the bottom, so that the plant doesn't start rotting out. So that is where I made my mistake. So after 2 weeks, I could see that I was getting a lot of yellowing leaves, and you can see this one here, all yellowed and hanging and looking really bad. I got that on a lot of the stems, so I knew something was wrong with the roots. So I took up the plant out of the leca balls, and sure enough, I could see that there was a lot of rot, a lot of the rhizomes were rotting. So I had to get all of that out. I had to reflush the root system area and just keep that was still looking okay. And I re-put it in the pot with no nutrient mix at all. And it's been like that for actually over a month now. And I've actually just been flushing it through maybe once a week and nothing left in the bottom. And it looks to me like the rest of the plants are bouncing back. even though I have this piece here that is dead and needs to be taken off, I have two long stems that are green, the leaves are lovely and viable, and one of them is flushing out a new stem at the bottom. So in this video, I've decided to take up this plant out of its nursery pot and remove all the lecker balls, look at the roots, see what's happening, and reorganize this plant in a little bit smaller see-through plastic pot so that I'll be able to keep an eye on the roots from now on. And I am expecting some kind of special surprise. I have a feeling, because my plant is speaking to me very clearly now, it's telling me it still wants to survive after all these years with me, after everything that I've put it through, and after me keeping it going and not throwing it away. It's showing me it wants to survive, and I'm thinking now it's probably started growing out some more fresh white water roots that are more acclimatized to this setup. So I'm really hoping that's what I'm going to see. Of course, I'm going to prune back the dead stem here and leave the rest on. And I hope I don't snap these last two stems in the process, because they are so delicate and just can't look after themselves. Right, let's get on to my other plant now. I actually planted up this plant exactly the same day as this plant. So this plant, this is my Ficus Elastica Burgundy, and I've had this in its semi-hydroponic setup as well for 2 months. And this plant I really didn't enjoy because it gets smothered with mealybugs all the time. I constantly spray it, I constantly hose it over with the shower, and it's been outside all last summer to help boost it. And whatever I do, it doesn't take very long. And even though now I've flushed it off again, flushed through all my lecker balls today, rinsed everything off, because this plant did have some mealybugs on it, I know that even if it looks clear and clear now, it's going to have mealybugs on it within the next few weeks again. But it's never a huge problem. They're so easy to get off. It's not one of these insects that is really damaging for your plant unless you leave it there and don't do anything and it gets smothered with them. If you just have a few, because I get them around the new leaves, of course, and the unfurling leaves. As soon as they start unfurling, I see there's a colony of these mealybugs inside there. It's easy to spray them off. It's easy to wipe them off. It's not a huge problem. And in fact, my plant is looking better than ever since it's been semi-hydroponic. So this has been an opposite of my Zamioculcas zamiofolia. This plant was losing leaves in soil. It was producing such small leaves that were coming out, and they were getting covered, as I said, with mealybugs. There was no growth in the bottom or anything like this. And now it's just flushing out new growth all over. The bottom of the stems have produced 8 new stems at least, and then there's some up in the middle here, and there are new leaves coming out at the top constantly. They're a lovely green color. Some of the leaves still have the burgundy color, but they're a lot more green and lush looking. But I do have this burgundy and the red underneath the new leaves as they come out, which is really lovely. So now I'm starting to appreciate this plant even more. I want it to stay like this, a lovely bushy plant, and that is why I'm going to allow all these stems at the bottom to carry on growing out and just let this fill out to be a lovely bush, because I was thinking it was looking very bare and leggy at the bottom. A lot of these larger leaves fell off and yellowed off and so forth. But I am so surprised with this. This has been a huge success. Every single way around on this plant just looks amazing now. So I am so pleased about the outcome of this one. So anyway, now I'm going to get on with my Zamioculcas zamiofolia, because I really do want to see if this plant is worth me saving for years to come. How many years have I had you? I think I've had this plant a good 5 years. I just can't give up. So anyway, let me put my Ficus Elastica Burgundy over to the side here, because I'm going to need to have space to work, and it looks fine there. So this plant, what I'm going to do first is prune off this. Oh, I didn't need to prune it off. It just fell off and all the leaves are falling off and everything. So you can see here, this is completely and utterly gone, dried out, shriveled off, dead. perfect. It's away from my plant without me having to do a lot of pruning and cutting with scissors. So just with that one stem gone by itself, this plant is already looking much better because the rest is green. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lift it up, lean it to the side, and just tip all of the leccables out because this is completely dry. As I said, I don't have any water reservoir. I don't want to rot it out anymore. So we're going to tip all the leccables into this cachet pot. And then it's going to be very easy for me to see what's going on in the pot. And here, hanging on the edge of the pot, I have a sloughed out part of the stem. Now, let's see what's going on here. So even without much watering, they're extremely moist. So I decided to quickly get myself a tray for this because these stems are just so delicate that they're going to snap if I don't have something to lay them down on. But I can see a lot of the roots here are sloughing off. A lot of the rhizomes are kind of rotting. But there are also those that are perfectly fine and their roots have dried out in certain places, too wet in other places. Let's just have a closer look because despite how this looks, I am going to put this in a new pot and I'm going to keep this plant going. I'm determined to. So if we look here, this is what my roots are looking like. Soft, there's gunge down there, rotting bits, sloughed off bits of roots and so forth. So this is what's really important to get out in the beginning when you're starting your semi-hydroponic setup with a plant that doesn't like to be in water too much. I do have new roots that have come out in the middle. It might be a bit difficult to see, but here, these are new roots here. And they're looking fine, and here as well. And there's a new one down there actually, and there's a new one, if we look here, there's a new one come out here. This is a new root. This is a new root, this one here. And you can see that lovely one down there, and down there at the front there. So there is hope. This plant has produced itself some lovely roots that are becoming more acclimatized to this passive hydroponic setup. So I'm just going to do my best to repot this plant and see what happens. But after 2 months, I still have lovely healthy green stems. I have a new shoot coming out actually on this rhizome here. That's really nice to see. So I think this plant is going to bounce back as long as I get rid of all of that excess organic material. So I'm going to do that and I'll be back to pot this up. So I've now been and flushed off all of these roots, and I used an old toothbrush to try and get into the crevices and take off as much of the sloughing off roots and soil and all the other organic material around them. And they're looking much better than they were. So I'm hoping this will be another good fresh start to keep this plant going. But I want to show you that my plant actually has shown me that it has the will to survive because it has produced beautiful water roots already. So if we look here, you can see the roots are much fresher and cleaner. These large, thicker roots here are the old soil roots, but this white root here and the one down there and the one down here are new water roots that are growing out, and I think they're looking absolutely fabulous. These rhizomes are still fresh, they still look potato colored, they're hard, they're looking good, so there's a lot of hope for them as well. And the bottom of the stems are very clean and clear. I have a new shoot coming out on this rhizome here, and then there's this baby one on the way up here from this rhizome, so that's doing well. That lovely new white root there is amazing. And these big soil roots, well, they're hanging on. And if I need to go in and check again at some point in the future when this has more water roots, then I can go and prune off these larger old soil roots maybe. So this is how the roots of this plant are looking after 2 months. So the only thing left for me to do now is to get these repotted up. I have my plastic pot here that I've put holes around for oxygenation with my soldering iron. So that's ready to go. I just need to get my lacquer balls, which I have, that have been soaking for many days now. So they're all moist and ready to go. I have my support and I have my rhizomes. So I need to put the lacquer balls up to a third of the way up so that these roots aren't right down at the bottom. So that's the first thing to do. I think that's about it. Now I can get my plants and put them in my pot here. Get rid of this tray. Like that. So now I have my rhizomes, and I'm wondering if I can put a little bit more. No, I think that's enough. No, a little bit more lacquer balls, I think. I don't want these to be too close to the bottom because I don't want them to be sitting in nutrient mix later on too much. I want them to be higher up so that the plant can choose to produce its water roots and search down into the nutrient mix itself. So I'm going to put my roots so that I can see a little bit of the bigger roots out towards the edge already, so I'll be able to see how they're doing, these old soil roots. Put that there. I've got my two stems in the middle here and a baby stem there. So now it's a matter of just filling this up to get these supported. But before I do any more, I'm going to have to put my support in, otherwise. See if we can capture both of them. Yes, get in. Otherwise, I might not be able to push this down afterwards. Oh, I didn't get that one in, did I? Get in there. Get in there. Don't cause me fuss. To the side, in. There you go. Now they're in. So now I can make sure I can push my support right down to the bottom here, which I've done. That's really important. So there we go, that's me done. My whole pot is filled up with the lacquer balls and the whole plant seems secure enough with its stake. And this ring, I can just bend it if it's leaning forward or anything like that to give it the shape that I want to keep these stems up. And now my two stems are looking absolutely fabulous. And this is now the second time I've taken this plant out of the pot, flushed it all out and cleaned it all off, so that there's the minimal amount of organic material down in these lacquer balls. And we'll see how long this lasts before I need to go and do it again. But this plant now, I think, will do very well. The lacquer balls are moist. The plant has been disturbed a lot again. I've had to prune off a lot of old roots and so forth, so I will definitely not be watering this plant. I'll probably leave this plant and not water it now for a couple of weeks. All I'll do is lift out the pot out of its cachet pot, which I have down here so that the whole thing looks very nice. And check if it looks very, very, very dry, then I will just water around with nutrient mix without leaving any reservoir in this pot at all. And I will carry on doing that with this plant now until I see new stems growing up, showing me that this plant is balanced out, it's growing more water roots, and it is sustaining itself fine. And I'll probably do that actually as much as possible, but if I'm not going to be home, then I will leave it with a little reservoir with maybe about an inch so that the lacquer balls can suck up more of the moisture around the roots of the plant. But while I'm home, this method of just rinsing through and leaving no reservoir is going to be the best way to keep this plant happy and alive, I think. So now it's ready to go in its cachet pot, because you should never have a plant like this in a see-through container with nothing around it, because you'll get algae growing in your nutrient mix and it's not good for the roots to be in the light or anything like that. So a cachet pot is a necessity when you're doing it this way, and you can use any style, any color or anything. So that's another wonderful reason to have a cachet pot. And then you can lift up if you're one of these people that love to see roots and so forth, and see your roots whenever you want to without them being exposed to too much light and no algae growth. But this plant now is looking absolutely fabulous. That is a big change since the beginning of this video. And I hope now that these two stems are going to sustain themselves. My little young one that's coming up here is going to carry on. The new shoot that's coming up on the other rhizome will start coming up. And then maybe next year, January, February, this plant will start producing a few more stems and start bushing out for me. We'll see. But now I've done my best to keep my least favorite plant alive for years to come. But I think it's going to surprise me. I think it's going to bounce back, bush out and look beautiful. And if this plant here is an example of that, well, then I'm going to be a very, very happy man, because this plant was also dropping everything and looking thin and looking awful, and now it's just producing, I don't know how many stems all over it and bushing out. So I'm really pleased about the outcome of my first 2 ever semi-hydroponic setups anyway, and I've learned so much. So if you're going to be doing this with any kind of Dracaena, Sansevieria types, any cactus types or Orthoopsis or anything like that, and your ZZ plants or anything else that doesn't like too much water, then this is the way to go. You're going to have to rinse through your plant yourself and control it that way, rather than relying on the reservoir in the beginning. But this ficus here absolutely loves water. So I keep this filled up to around 3 or 4 inches with water constantly, and this is the effect. This plant is really loving that, and its roots are just growing out amazingly. This again is in a non-see-through pot because I did this in the beginning. So you can't see the roots or anything on this plant, but I know that they are doing amazingly. So I hope this video has been informative and inspiring and shows you that even if your plant looks like it's starting to dive, give it a chance. Get in, sort out your roots, flush it through, rinse it out, and just keep the root ball going, because the roots are the most important part. Even if you should have to prune back the whole top, take everything away, you will be surprised that when those roots have adjusted themselves, new shoots will start coming up. So all I have to say now is thank you very much once again for watching this video with me. Please remember to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when my next video will be coming up. And I will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.